Hello again everyone, Mary Rose here at Stitch Bliss Corner, and I hope you liked my nativity scene. I put that out every Christmas, and usually baby Jesus doesn't go into the little manger until, Christmas Day, but this year I just placed him in there because it's going to be his birthday very soon, as everyone knows. Now then, I've got quite a few bits and pieces here, and I thought, well, I'll just go through them. Hopefully I won't get too mixed up with all the things I've got here. So first of all, I would like to say hello to Cindy from Cindy's Cross Stitch. And she very kindly sent me her little Christmas postcard, and there she is, gorgeous girl that she is, with her sunflowers. It's hard to tell the difference as to which one is the sunflower, isn't it? Gorgeous girl. And there's examples of her beautiful stitching there, and so thank you very much, Cindy. That's beautiful. We'll put that up not too far away from the manger. So I'll just pop that over there. She can keep me company. Now then, I think I will now just go to a short little video about my Dimensions kit, Quiet Night, which I have finished. So we'll go to that now. I'm just going to show you now my stitching on Quiet Night. It's on 18 count Ada, Gold Collection Dimensions Petites. And I think when you see my stitching, you will see that I have no snow on there. And it's not because I don't like doing French knots. I don't mind doing those at all. It's just that for me it looked more serene without the snow, and I really didn't like the snow on this little fox here. It didn't seem fair to him. So yeah. I mean, it's bad enough he was out on a cold night, but anyway. So I shall just show you my stitching now. And here it is. Now, when I do dimensions, well, any sort of, dimensions kits, they have instructions like using 3 strands, 4 strands, for different parts of the piece. Now, for me, I don't really go for that. Sometimes I do. When I did a Buddha from Dimensions, I did use 3 strands on one part of it, but mostly I just used 2 strands for the background and half crosses usually for background, and then for things I want to stand out I do a full cross. So going to see. I'm sorry this is wobbling about a bit, but I'm in the kitchen. I've got my kitchen lights on over this. I don't know that it'll work very well, but anyway. So yeah, so you can sort of see the difference there, the serenity of the piece compared to, I mean, I'm sure some people would just think, well, she's crackers because that snow just finishes it off beautifully. Which I do get, but for me, I just like that quiet little scene where the snow has stopped for a little while and it's just quiet and peaceful. And little Foxy, little Foxy down here, he's just getting a bit of a respite from the snow. Now I've used couching for the snow outline on the trees there instead of backstitch, and the roof here, that's just couching. That's all. It's all couching. It's much quicker than backstitch. And these windows here, they're couched as well, with just little loop stitches to hold. Like I just went from top to bottom, just one long strand, and then I looped a few stitches to hold it down. Sometimes you don't need to use many stitches at all to hold it down. It'll just sit there nicely. So yeah, I just thought I'd give you a little tour through this one. And I've used far less branches and things here than in the original. The original's got quite a few more branches there from the tree, but I decided that I just wanted a certain amount and that was enough. Okay, so back to me. I shall see you shortly. Back again. So yes, as I showed in the video, I did make some changes, and I'm not averse to French knots at all. In fact, I've got a piece here to show you that shows you that I don't mind doing them. I quite enjoy them. But I'll just show you once again the little dimensions. Petites piece, and there it is. And it was very enjoyable to stitch this piece. Now I do have a few handy hints for anyone who is thinking of doing a dimensions petite, because I have already done one. I did a lighthouse, and I think even though it's only a small, very small piece of fabric, I think it may well be easier then to grid it. I recommend gridding anyway, regardless of the size of the piece, because it saves so much frogging, and you know pretty much within a few stitches where you're going wrong, and you can just whip them out quickly and move on, which is great. Now anyone who is deciding whether they want to try full coverage, I think a petite is a good way to go, but not if you're a first stitcher, not if you're an inexperienced stitcher, shall we say, because petite patterns or charts are very fussy. They're full because there's so much in them. There's so much going on in there. And of course, where I can't show you the actual chart, but here you've got the actual, you know, the symbols for your background and everything, but then you've got all the lines over the top for all the branches and where they have to go. So it gets very busy in there, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's very good to have gridding. And when I get a dimensions chart, I always go over the line of 10. Well, sorry, I'm just trying to be, it's very difficult to show you without showing you, if you know what I mean. Until I find a chart here. I'm just going to show you the edge of it or something. I always make a copy to work with and mark off as I go. But as you can see here, for example, you've got your grid lines there every 10, and here the grid line just disappears because they've got a little dash there and another little dash, you know, all down there. But I just go over it with a bold pen so I can still see my grids. And the same here where they've put little dashes, because as far as I'm concerned, The background's the most important, getting those crosses in first, and then you worry about putting your branches on. And I did put a lot less branches, as I said, on the top of mine, because I think you just do it to how you like it. You know, I mean, I don't know, well, what's the artist's name? Oh, Fred Swan. Well, Fred might have been very keen on lots of branches. That was his thing, obviously. But, you know, so I'll just show you now. I'm not sure I'm going to actually use this mat, but it's just to give you an idea of how it will end up. Maybe I'll move that down a bit because you can see a bit of the blue there. Right, now I've made a few little notes here, just because I'm absent-minded sometimes. Yes, now yes, that's right. I always use a hoop. Anyone who watches me knows that I do that. So I'm just trying to put things down here. It's the usual problem of when, you know, you do a video, you've never got enough room. But I always use a hoop. Now, the problem with using a hoop, I have a small one, is that you can't get the even tension. So normally my edges are pretty much straight. I do have a little bit of indentation when I'm doing half stitches, and I did all the background in half stitch because I like it to have a little bit of distance there. Even if it says a full cross, I usually do a half anyway. And that's the other thing with dimensions. They suggest 3 threads for this and 4 threads for that. I usually just use the 2 threads unless I'm particularly keen on using 3 for whatever reason. So yeah, so with the hoop, I would suggest if you are a hoop person, you're better off to get your own piece of navy Aida cloth and just get a bigger piece of fabric, and then you can put your hoop on with no problems. The next petite that I do, I've already got the material, the fabric that I'm going to use. I'm not going to use the one that they put in the kit, and I'll show you that very shortly. Now, just to show you that I'm not too concerned about worrying about French knots, just a few moments here. Oh yes, now before I move on to that, I have to get my, yes, now here's one of the cards that was in the dimension kit, which came from China, because Luda told me that, because she says that all the dimensions kits that are sourced in China have this kind of arrangement. So what I usually do, because usually the threads come out from here, so the first thing I do is I go and I make holes opposite all the way along. And I'm a bit ham-fisted at times. Sometimes it only just makes it. Then I cut all these off one by one, and I thread them in to the other side so that they're just in a loop and easy to get out. And then with the if I have blended fabric, if I have blended threads, I have a separate card with the holes and the symbol, and I just loop that. If I've got a spare piece of blended threads left over, I just put those onto that little hole, and then if I need that blended thread colour again, I can look there first to make sure that I can use that up. Very handy. And also what I've done, because Luda suggested also, instead of passing on your threads from dimensions kits, if you use dimension or throwing them out, some people do I guess, She suggests to keep the threads because you might need them for a future kit if you run out. Well, I don't usually run out because, as I said, I only use 2 threads when they're suggesting all sorts of combinations. So I'm usually pretty okay there. But what I've decided to do was follow her advice, and she just keeps them, she wraps them up and puts them in a box. But I've decided to bobbinate mine. And so I've made a little dimensions kit bobbin set there. And these will be joining this box for me for the future. So I'm really quite pleased about that. So thank you for that hint, Luda. That was a very good suggestion. Now, is there anything else? So I've got 2 things here with... Yeah. Well, someone has defined Petites as deceptively difficult, and I think that's probably quite true. They are deceptively difficult, but I think if you grid and if you prepare your chart well with the bold lines so you know exactly where you are before you do all your embellishments over the top, I think you're pretty right with it. You should be pretty okay. And of course I spend next to no time with my outlining and everything because I do my couching instead of laborious backstitching, which it mystifies me why people still don't give couching a try. They just seem to think that there's only one choice you can make, but anyway, that's up to them. And you know, on we go. Right, so the next dimensions I will be doing after the one I'm doing, which I shall show you a little bit later, is this one. I put 3 that I've got remaining of Petites that we bought in front of Harlequin, and he thought that this one would be the, you know, the one to go for. So I'm doing this one, and of course I've left my piece of 18 count Ada fabric out in the lounge room, but I grid that up while I'm watching TV. And I would suggest to anyone, if they don't like gridding, just prepare, you know, have your fabric there, and you can just do it while you're watching TV. I mean, instead of sitting there twiddling your thumbs. I mean, most stitchers, they can't just watch TV anyway. They have to have something in their hands. So it may as well be gridding. So that's the size of the cloth, that the fabric that's been provided. And mine is, you know, somewhat bigger, and it's white. This is a kind of a cream colour, which may well be because they were trying to suggest that apparently there's a yellowy sort of sunshine in the Tuscany. But I'm just going to go for the white, and I may go over it with blue tent stitch or something if I'm not happy with how it looks. But I think Ada looks lovely, whether it's got stitching on it or not. But that's me, and maybe I'm a bit quirky in that department. Now I thought I would just show, oh no, I was going to tell you about the French knots, wasn't I? Now, some years ago we got a calendar, and this, the Thomas Kincaid picture was on it. And I just thought that was absolutely gorgeous. So you know, he's the painter of light, and he certainly is. And you can see all the, oh well, this is the painting anyway. So I was very pleased when I saw that there was a kit of this particular, which I don't have with me, but anyway, let's not worry about that. I'll just show you. This is the picture that I did here, and you can see this is all masses, and people have already seen this, I've shown this before, masses and masses and masses of French knots. And I just think that's just lovely. I have that next to our bed. I see that every night before I go to sleep. You just can't quite see what's beyond those gates. How beautiful is that? Thomas has a wonderful way of expressing himself, and I got 2 of those for whatever reason at the time. I think I might have been thinking of stitching it for someone. And you know what life is like. I mean, people come into your life and they go out of your life, and I think that's sort of a thing that happens, isn't it? And I think this person that I was stitching this, that I had in mind, might like it. I think she must have just drifted out of my life. So that's where I got up to with the second one. And as you can see, I didn't grid this. This was a long time ago before I started gridding. So there's a lot of counting in that. And I am thinking now, instead of having that colour scheme of flowers, I'm going to do purples and lilacs and blues and everything all along here. And here, I'm thinking of making that not so brown. Maybe I'll take out some of that and make it more blue, just to make it different. When I get back around to it, of course, because this has been rolled up for about 12 years. Isn't it amazing how time just disappears? I mean, when you're a child, a day is like a week. But as you get older, the weeks just fly by. I mean, we have fish and chips every Friday night and a very nice pudding. So Friday nights are particularly enjoyable to me. And they seem to roll around pretty quickly, which is excellent as far as I'm concerned. Right, so now I'm just going to show you a bit more of the stitching that I have here. Because I was going through things and I thought, well, I've got so many half-done things over there. Anyway, whatever. This is just to show you how I changed something. Now, this is the Gold Collection, Oriental Splendor by Lena Liu. And I think you've probably seen this. So sometimes it's just the vase. I've seen that. And this has got all sorts of things going on. And it's partly printed. It's a partly printed picture. And then you put your cross stitch over the top, or your satin stitch, or whatever you're doing, because this has got various stitches on it. Some people don't like the printed cross stitch patterns. I've got another one here that I'll show you in a minute, but I quite like them. I think they're pretty good, actually. So anyway, so here's where I've changed it. Now you can see those flowers. Try and remember, those flowers are all white. And I did, white with a sort of beigey highlights and things. And I did start doing them like that. But then I looked at them and I thought, I don't really like all that white. So I changed it. And I did some red flowers in there. And some, well, I suppose they're almost like peonies, aren't they? Lilacs and pinks. I kept the lilies, of course, the correct colour. I'm just trying to... I've got that table there with the wheels on it that lock, because you can't have wheels that, stay in an open position all the time. It automatically locks itself, so you can't wheel it. It's the silliest thing. But anyway. And so, yes, you've got some yellow roses there. Let's see if I'll bring it around. See, I'm going to frame this soon, but I thought I'll show it to you now before it's framed so that you can see the detail. And here, I did gold thread round there and here, and highlighted all around here. and the goldfish there. That's got gold round it. That's all got gold thread through it. And there. And there was some, oh yes, here on the vase there. I did petit point all round there. That really wasn't exactly expected to be done, but I did it because I enjoyed doing it. In the vase there. Those flowers there. But it was very, very enjoyable. I mean, you know, it's the sort of thing almost like the old-fashioned embroidery with the satin stitches and the lazy daisy and stem stitch and everything. So that was fabulous doing that. So just thought I'd show you that one before it goes into the frame, and the reflection, you can't see anything once that happens. Then I thought some people might like to see what what's it called? Rocky Point. What Rocky Point looks like, mostly stitched. I haven't finished it because it went into storage and I couldn't get near it. Until I just take it out of the... Oh, blimey. Yeah, anyway, that came off, but don't worry about it. Yes, there's Rocky Point. That's the trouble with plastic. It tends to stick, doesn't it? So anyway, that's Rocky Point dimensions. And here is where I got with it. Oh, hang on, wait till I get something to put it on. This is another one that's been cooling its heels for quite some time. Yeah, see, it's losing some of its tension on the surface because it's just been sitting there. But my favourite part of it is this wave here. I mean, that's just beautiful, the way that it's just rolling over like that. Yeah. So I've just got to do the bottom and the top. So I mean, really, that isn't that far to go. And then the highlights on it, of course. So I just thought that you might like to see what that looks like. Let's see. Right, so that's that one. Now I was going to, oh, here we go. This is another one that has been sitting in my, I haven't got a box under the bed, but it's been sitting in a container for quite some time, waiting for a frame. It's an anchor, and it's this one from Mia collection. Kimono Pagoda View. I can't see an artist's name there, but anyway, that's the one it is. And it was a kit, as all the pieces that are left over. Let's pop it there. And this is how it came out. It's another one that's starting to pull in on one side because it's been sitting there for so long without any tension on it. But I do like this little cat here. And I don't know, I think I might have liked having the full temple there, but it's supposed to have the, frame round it. So I suppose that's okay. Yeah, so that's that one. Now, just wait a second, I've got to go and get something. Back? Yes. Oh, it's funny, my daughter, she gave Harlequin an advent calendar of Christmas beer, so I can open it every day, and there's a different bottle of beer in there from a different part of the world. He said some Romanian, Japanese, German, all sorts of different beers. So it's been a very enjoyable lead up to Christmas for Harlequin this year. I don't know, maybe pop into my head, but anyway. Now the latest, now that I've finished the winter scene there, I went straight on to a piece that I think is very appropriate for this time of the year, and that is this beautiful Dimensions kit. Just careful getting this out, I don't want the same thing to happen. Other one, this one, Lost No More. It's very powerful but very serene and beautiful. And the artist, Greg K. Olson, you can Google him, and he's got a lot of paintings of Jesus and of showing his faith. And I know there are a lot of people that, well, not a lot, I don't know how many people there are, but there are people who say they don't believe in anything and that they're atheists. Whilst I do understand that, I myself, over the years, because I sort of started out looking at Jesus as more of a historic figure, someone that was a very good person and that was persecuted and died. And I've always, because I've got a very logical, rational sort of brain, but as time has gone by, I've realised that what you can see isn't always what you think you see. I mean, you can see a leaf on the road, and at first you might think it's a bird. And as you get closer, you realise, no, that's a leaf. And I think, I've mentioned this before, but if I told you that the television in your lounge room or wherever you sit to watch TV, nobody made it, you'd think I was a crackpot. And yet, we're expected to believe that this whole world, somehow, all the nature, all the interactions, all the cycles of life, the complexity, even in a petal of a rose, the complexity in that, we're supposed to all accept that it just evolved somehow out of a primeval ooze. So my logic is telling me that there must be something. It only stands to reason that there's some kind of designer there. But apart from that, I count myself as being extremely blessed and extremely lucky that I do have a deep faith. A faith, it's a kind of a knowing. Regardless of what happens to you or your loved ones or anything that may occur to you or whatever, there's that knowing that that this isn't it. This is like you're a ship on an ocean, and there is so much more than this. You know, I mean, our time here. So I think this particular picture, because I've been looking for one for quite some time, for me, I just think it's just so lovely. And the faith of that person just comes out and just seeps into you. I think it's just beautiful. So this is what I'm stitching this month, and I shall stitch it until it's complete, as is my way I do things these days. And I'll just show you where I'm up to. And this is the fabric that was supplied, and that's as far as I've got. I've decided, I always start in the middle, and I decided to work up, and then I'll do all the top here and just come down to the figure here of Jesus. I'll just show you again so you can see. Here's the picture. But it's a joy to stitch. Of course it's a joy to stitch. And you can feel the serenity and the peace and the calm as you're stitching that piece. Because, well, it's the Holy Spirit, isn't it? That's the point. It's available to anyone, and I'm not someone to, as far as I'm concerned, what you believe is what you believe. I think what bothers me is that people who don't believe in God tend to have that slightly superior attitude, you know, almost as though you're the one that's not being logical, because you do believe, because that's what faith is. You know, faith is letting go of a hand before you can get the next hand, because you've got the faith there. And you can't just wake up one day. Well, I suppose you can wake up one day and suddenly have it, but all the praying in the world is not going to give you that faith. Somehow or other, it just makes itself known to you. And life is never the same again afterwards. You know, it's just, once that's happened to you, it stays with you, which is fabulous as far as I'm concerned. I think it's wonderful. I think that will be all for this episode. I won't be seeing you before Christmas, so all those who watch my carryings on, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and that you receive whatever it is you're hoping for. Try not to work too hard. I mean, I think it's a very hard time for women, Christmas time, because, you know, there's so much catering to do, and of course, you know, it seems to fall to the women of the household to be doing most of that, which is probably, you know, logical, because they know where everything is. I mean, there's nothing worse than a man offering to help you to do something, and then you've got to tell them exactly where everything is and all that. And by the time you've done all that, you could have done it 3 times yourself, couldn't you? So that's not much point. But I mean, it's good that they show willing. I mean, maybe that's the most important thing, the fact that they do offer in the first place. and then you can say, oh, no, it's fine, thank you very much, and they can go off quite happily thinking, well, I did offer, and you can think, well, he did offer. So it sort of goes both ways there. Right, anyway, so I am going now, and I shall catch you later on. Bye for now.